Hey everyone, Sumo Spiffy here. 2024 is sliding to a close, and that means we gotta kick out some hot takes for 2025. We got several viewer predictions worth sharing, and they will be shared, but there's definitely a winner amongst them. We'll get to all that though. First, real quick, let's talk about last year's predictions. Number 10, Kirishima was better than 50-50 to win and make Yokozuna, and if he did, well, he didn't, so it doesn't really matter. It feels like it slipped the general consciousness that he was only a couple wins short of the rope. He wasn't fighting from behind either, like he was 2 wins back the whole second half of the Basho. He was tied for first with Kota no Waka and Terunofuji after day 13. But I still gotta say, the 50-50 shot of him making Yokozuna was wrong because, in the moment, even though the opportunity was right there, it never felt like he had a realistic shot of pulling it off. Koto and Teru were crushing, and even though he matched their records, it looked like it would take a miracle for him to beat either the way they were fighting at the time. He lost to both the last 2 days, then he got injured in training, and now we wait to see if he can stage a comeback or if he winds up being yet another case of the body failing before the crown is secured. Number 9. If Kirishima didn't make Yokozuna in January, Kota no Waka would make Ozeki before Kiri made Yokozuna. Kota no Waka made Ozeki on the strength of that January tournament, so this prediction was instantly correct, but in fairness, I didn't predict Kota taking Ozeki would directly thwart Kiri's Yokozuna dreams. Number 8. Sticking with the Ozeki. Kiri and Koto going for their respective titles would make Hoshoryu an afterthought. Hard to argue that was wrong. Even Kirishima's injury was bigger news than anything Hoshoryu did before November, and if Nephew had 13 wins in November but didn't have a chance at the title on day 15, I'm not sure they'd even be discussing him as a Yokozuna possibility. Number 7. Every 2023 tournament was won by someone in the Sanyaku, but in 2024 at least one winner would be in Maegashira. Got that right, but I was thinking someone established who got on a roll, or else Ono Sato before he made it to the Sanyaku. Who the hell saw Takeru Fuji coming in that hot? I was being silly with number 6, so number 5. Hakuoho would average 10 wins per basho when he competes, even though at least one tournament would be in Makushita where he only gets 7 matches. And not quite. I thought he would recover a little more quickly than he has, and in retrospect even that was optimistic. Hopefully his relative struggles have been because he's still healing and not because he'll never be the same. If he was anyone else, going 11, 8, and 10 wins in Juryo would look really good coming into the top division, but it's so hard now to tell how often everything will click for him. Number 4. Atami Fuji would have exactly 5 winning records. He had 2, and then he had 3 7 and 8s. You can watch the Atami breakdown for more on how he managed to do that, but the short reaction is, bro, what are you doing? Number 3. More guys would make it to Makuuchi in 2024 than 2023, which meant more than 56. We had 57, huzzah! We also predicted Wakataka Kage and Hakuoho would make it back to the top division barring injury, which Waka did and Hakuoho got hurt again. There was also a mention of that Takeru Fuji guy who looked like he might make some noise. That seemed about right. Number 2. Takakeisho. Basically, any good prediction about Takakeisho was wrong. But Shimano Umi did stay in Juryo the whole year. Hooray! And finally, Takayasu winning a Yusho. Yet again, he pulled off a second place, the 8th June Yusho of his career, but even that wasn't a tournament where he really contended. The basis for the prediction came true, with him falling plenty far in rank where he just needed to take advantage of a weaker schedule. All his body had to do was hold up for 15 days one time. Alas, it never did, and now looks like it never will. And now let's drop 10 new hot takes on the sport for 2025. Some of these will have viewer predictions alongside them, rated by spice level. Low spice means it's very reasonable. High spice means it's going out on a limb but still plausible. A few are utterly bonkers or clearly for laughs, but I think y'all will be able to see why. Number 10. Barring significant injury, Takeru Fuji will spend the whole year in Makuuchi. This is less a risky prediction and more an apology for doubting him so much in the back of 2024. Dude kept eating his Wheaties, and this is me acknowledging he's still got enough game left to hang in against the top guys. Sort of a similar prediction, Tamawashi will not retire this year. Yeah, I'd be pretty surprised if he retired, so this is low spice.
It's okay.
Pretty much all sumo predictions come with the caveat of barring injury, but there's no reason to think he's done yet. Number 9. The guys who made their Makuuchi debut in 2024 and dropped right back out, so Shishi, Asakoryu, Shirokuma, Shimazuumi, and Toki Hayate, will spend less time in the top division in 2025 than guys who have never been in the top division at all. Toki Hayate is still there, but Tamashoho's making his debut, so they balance things out to start. You might look at this like an Aoni Shiki prediction. It's not impossible that he'll spend more time in Makuuchi than the 5 of them combined, but that's probably putting too much on one guy. Kaio's gotta carry some of the load too. Number 8. If Ryuden has a losing record in Juryo in January, we'll never see him in the top division again. Admittedly, this might be less of a prediction and more of an attempt at manifestation, but I'm calling it anyway. This comment was more directed at stuff I could predict, and I just want it to be known I had these written before I asked for suggestions. I guess some people just know where my head's at. Number 7. The Waka Bros combined for at least 10 tournaments in the Sanyaku. This might seem like a gimme after November, but literally everyone who hasn't made Ozeki is capable of slipping enough to lose a Sanyaku spot. If I had to be more specific, I'd say it's more likely Wakataka Kage spends the whole year in the Sanyaku, and that bit of padding is for his brother, but I don't think that's by any means a given. Number 6. At least 5 Juryo titles will be won by guys who have spent time in the top division. At some point, Asanoyama should be back, and the bottom of Makuuchi is a churn of guys who are much better than most of Juryo, but either not good enough or too wounded to consistently stay in the top division. There's just such a gap between the 50 or so guys capable of hanging around in Makuuchi and the Juryo regulars that I think we're gonna see a lot of Kinbozan type situations. I was gonna say this would happen in all 6 tournaments, but I'm allowing for one where just the right guys move up and there's no one clearly fighting below their level in Juryo. Number 5. Either Abi or Wakamoto Haru go on a legitimate Ozeki run. By legit run, I mean they have 2 performances good enough where they're at Sekiwake and 12 wins would get them to Ozeki. I'm not predicting both because I don't think there's enough wins left over once the current Ozeki get their piece, plus Waka Prime, Takeru Fuji, and so on. The obvious one of these 2 to do it is Wakamoto Haru, since he went on such a run in 2023, and Abi's never been close. But I've also never seen Abi on point the way he was in November, at least not at a higher rank. Waka's still the more likely of the 2, but either one could get on that kind of roll. Bringing it back to Wakataka Kage, here's a prediction that says he's gonna win and get his deserved Ozeki promotion. Now, if you're newer to the sport and your main perspective on Wakataka Kage has been him steamrolling back up the ranks, this might seem very reasonable, but I think this is moderately spicy. If you look at the 2 years he spent in the upper ranks after COVID took him out of January 2021, he only had 10 wins 3 times in 12 tournaments. He's looked quite comfortable and strong in his comeback, but to make Ozeki, he'll either have to score several wins over the current Ozeki or lose almost 0 fights to anyone else. That's a high bar to clear. On the flip side, Takeru Fuji not even making the Sanyaku. Now, as a caveat, this prediction said, well, he won't make Ozeki, but it's supposed to be spicy. Now, Takeru Fuji not making Ozeki is beyond reasonable, just because of how many tournaments it'll likely take him for him to get in a position to make the Ozeki run. Not making Sanyaku would be incredibly spicy, perhaps downright unlikely, but since the predictor isn't even that sold on the idea, I think we can only call this a moderately hot take. Number 4. None of the current Ozeki will go Kadoban, so none of them will even have a losing record this year, and if any of them make Yokozuna, they won't miss more than 1 tournament. The second part of that is probably more questionable than the first, at least if Koto or Hoshoryu get there in January. But the sport hasn't had an upper Sanyaku, Yokozuna, and Ozeki of at least 3 wrestlers where everyone fought and had a winning record since September of 2018. The idea of having 3 guys who can hold up to the demands for a full year and who would be the upper Sanyaku if Teru retires is like an ancient and forgotten concept these days. I think these guys can do it. And yet, the most repeated prediction was that Ono Sato was going to drop out of Ozeki.
Hot! Too hot!
And I understand the instinct based on that underwhelming Ozeki debut. Like, and for real, much respect to these folks for putting themselves out there, because I know they're not the only ones with this idea in mind. But I think y'all are forgetting who we're talking about. It's never impossible that someone ends up with 1 losing record, but 2 straight, based on getting figured out instead of injured? Even if we assume the top guys find ways to beat him repeatedly, who does that include? Koto, Hoshoryu, Wakataka Kage. Maybe we include Takanosho and Abi based on recent performances. He still has to lose 3 more matches per tournament apart from those. I don't know where those are supposed to come from. Number 3. At least 2 wrestlers apart from Teru, Koto, Nephew, and Onosato will win tournaments in 2025. That probably doesn't sound like a big deal. It was just 2022 when we had 6 different winners through the year, but the way that went down speaks to how unusual it is. Mitakeumi won to make Ozeki, Wakataka Kage won and made everyone think he was the next Ozeki in waiting, Teru won, as he does, Ichinojo got on the run of his life, then Tamawashi did the same thing, and finally Abi won for Maegashira 9 after missing September. Normally not that many wrestlers are in contention. Plus, November was a statement from Koto and Hoshoryu that everything should run through them, and at a glance it looks like those two, Onosato and Teru, at least in January, should hold off any hopefuls the vast majority of the time. And I'm not making this prediction on the assumption that Takeru Fuji is going to take one either. He could, but you still got Wakataka Kage as a threat, Kirishima can make a lot of noise if he manages to heal, Takanosho gets mega stomped at high ranks, but if he drops to the mid ranks again and makes another run, at some point he could nail the 2 or 3 big wins he needs to take a Yusho. Hell, even Gonoyama has beaten everyone at the top except Kotozakura, and could do it again if everything's clicking. I think the current Ozeki should dominate enough to stop us from having 5 or 6 different winners, but I don't think they'll completely take over just yet. Relatedly, only 3 individual Rikishi will win Yushos this year. This is a little spicy given the recent history just mentioned, but I don't think anyone should be shocked if this occurs. Kotozakura will win at least 2 more Yushos in 2025 and be promoted to Yokozuna. Again, a bit of spice because it shows faith that Kotozakura from November is the one we'll see going forward, but it's still pretty reasonable. If he wins in January and gets promoted, he only needs 1 more Yusho during the year. Even if he finishes second and gets promoted, he's relatively young and healthy, and he should be able to win twice in 5 more tournaments. Now this one, there's going to be 6 different winners in 2025 and they're named. Teruno Fuji, Kotozakura, Hoshoryu, Onosato, Wakataka Kage, and Onokatsu.
Hot! Too hot!
This one goes all the way to the other end of the hot take spectrum and ski jumps over the edge. It's such a specific prediction, and then throwing Onokatsu in as the 6th guy? I like Onokatsu, but that's... oh boy. And then truly the greatest prediction of all time, Shodai stubs his big toe leaving his taxi on the first day and wins the tournament, while Kotozakura is promoted to Yokozuna for going 14-1. That means Shodai goes 15-0. I feel like every Basho has some situation we can refer to as the most Dark Lord of Chaos thing, but a Zen Shodai Basho while someone else makes Yokozuna would truly be the most Dark Lord of Chaos thing possible. Number 2, Atami Fuji makes the Sanyaku. Admittedly, this is highly dependent on Atami finding a way to stop brain farting himself into at least 1 loss every tournament, but he's turning a corner. A very long, gently curved corner that seems like it'll never end, but a corner nonetheless. But at least one person has much higher hopes for Atami, Atami Fuji Ozeki run. He's still so young he could make a small step forward and still be around that level.
Hot! Too hot!
Okay, obviously I like Atami Fuji's future, given that I think he'll make the next step up the ranks, but we're talking about a guy who's never had more than 8 wins above Maegashira 8. Even if we take Ozeki run as just that, a run that doesn't necessarily get there, that is mind-bendingly optimistic. And number 1, our next Yokozuna predictions. This is the only one I didn't already make when I asked for your ideas. I was gonna avoid it because everyone's got a tale and it could play out in so many different ways, but if everyone's talking about it, how can I not? So here goes. Hoshoryu either gets it in January or he doesn't get it, period. When you're talking about a very good wrestler who only needs 1 pop-off performance for any goal, be it Yokozuna, Ozeki, whatever, the odds are never 0%. But with Teru looking like he'll be in the mix and Onosato very unlikely to stagger through another Basho, those odds are low and they're still the best he'll have. Kotozakura and Onosato are both at a level where they could make it, but also could potentially get in each other's way. I'm saying at least one of them will get there. If Koto doesn't make it in January, he's still got the baseline capability of making another run during the year, but I'm with Mr. J-Wags in believing that, at that point, Onosato's got the edge. Regardless of which one it is though, what pushes it over the line for me is that if one of them is very close, I think a lot of opponents who have nothing personal to fight for will battle enough to make them earn the title, but not so hard as to really try and take it away. The sport needs a new king, and no one's going to question someone who lets it happen as long as they don't allow for a total walkover. Viewer predictions in this vein were pretty varied. We got one for 2 Yokozuna in 2025, and another that essentially says nobody gets it in January and nobody immediately goes on a new run either. But the title of absolute hottest take for 2025 goes to Ash 22 Ashes. Teruno Fuji retires by Natsu Basho, and no one will claim Yokozuna rank for at least another year.
Oh god, it's so good.
This may not immediately look that different from the others, but think about what's being said. First, nobody makes Yokozuna after January. Fair enough. Then Teruno Fuji retires before May. He's obviously ready to retire now, but he's hung on this long in the hope someone takes the crown from him first. So, what situations would lead to him retiring in this time frame? 1. He wins in January, stops any Yokozuna runs in progress, and doesn't let any others start. He retires right away on a high note. Then none of the Ozeki are able to put together the back-to-back performances necessary to reach Yokozuna. This is plausible, especially if they get in each other's way, but it's still a fairly hot take considering they all seem to be coming into their own. 2. Whether or not he wins in January, he doesn't retire right away. He waits until after March to see if anyone can at least start a Yokozuna run that continues into May. If someone does, I think he'll hang onto the crown until we see how that run finishes. So, if he retires after March, that means nobody is on a Yokozuna run. He knows he's done, and it's a minimum of 2 Bashos before anyone can take the title, so he retires. Just the idea that in this moment, where guys are on the verge of Yokozuna, they all completely fail to secure even a chance at the crown is super high, but it absolutely could happen. Koto and Hoshoryu putting it together in November, even though it looked like the culmination of all their work up to this point, still doesn't guarantee they can do it all the time. They could well have improved to the point where they can't go 13-14 wins consistently, but they can stop Onosato from doing it too. And then, this prediction says that's going to continue all the way through next March. I don't think that's likely, but is it plausible? Yeah, absolutely. So, Ash, congratulations on having the hottest sumo take for 2025. Your bragging rights are in the mail. And those are our hot takes for sumo in 2025. Thanks to everyone who contributed suggestions, and thanks to all of you for watching and supporting our efforts this year. The Basho tier list is coming, and time permitting, the obvious breakdown topic for January is who has the better shot at Yokozuna between Kotozakura and Hoshoryu. So keep an eye out for all that, have a great day, and I'll see you soon.